Telling the truth in a world of lies. That is true Christianity. Welcome, Catholicos, Catholics, Orthodox, Christians, all who seek the truth. Today I will be discussing, you've recently heard a lot about the Great Reset, or Build Back Better, all these slogans, which have an echo of what happened to the Catholic Church in the 1960s. So I'm going to talk about a book which details the Great Reset, the Build Back Better, the new religious order since the 1960s in the Catholic Church. And that book is called IOTA UNUM, which means one iota, which is like Jesus says, not one jot or tittle will be removed, not one iota will be removed, will disappear before everything is fulfilled. And every topic, every iota mentioned in this book, every section is way more than an iota. So this details the Great Reset in the Catholic Church, the desire of those who wanted to dissolve and coagulate, solve et coagula, which Archbishop Vigano mentioned to President Trump recently, which is printed on the forearms of Baphomet, which is the symbol of the devil, and even the author of Harry Potter has it tattooed on her arm. Solve and coagula, which is meaning to dissolve and to dissolve and to coagulate, to rebuild, build back better. So that was what was needed, was to dissolve and rebuild. And that's what happened in the Catholic Church in the 1960s and 70s. They dissolved, they demolished, and through a created crisis, a self-imposed crisis. As Paul VI himself says, the church is undergoing a self-demolition, a self-destruction, an auto-demolition. So the hierarchy, including Paul VI, precipitated the crisis, created the crisis, and from an illusionary crisis, it became a true crisis. They created doubt in faith, doubt in morals, doubt in discipline, because when you start tearing down everything that has been standing for 1,000, 1,500, 1,900 years in the name of the modern world and modern man and the modern times and the human development and all that stuff, when you tear down the most sacred of sacreds, especially the Holy Liturgy, and dissolve it, destroy it to build back better into the new liturgy, the new rite of Paul VI, as I said in other videos. Paul VI called his own liturgical deform. He called it the new liturgical, he said it is the liturgical innovation of the new rite. So he called it a liturgical innovation. In other parts of his speeches, he calls it a novelty. And he specifically calls it a new rite, not just for the Mass, for all 7 sacraments. And with a new rite, a new way of prayer, comes a new way of believing. So we are building back better from the old regime, the old Christian order, demolish the old Christian order to build back better into a new religious order, the Novus Ordo. And that is basically what happened in the Catholic Church. As I said, we're going to go through this book. I'm just going to give you the titles of the different sections. And it is a hard read. It does really need to be you need to concentrate when you're reading it. It's not like an easy, it's nice and simple. No, you got to think. Some words you don't understand. What does that mean? Like there's a chapter 10, it says, I can't even pronounce that word. Somatolatry and penance. And I thought, what is that? I don't even know what that means. So I had to look it up. It means the worship of the body, the exaggeration of the body, the human body, the worship of the body. That's that. So sometimes you'll actually have to look up a word. What does that mean? So what happened is, I'll just mention first of all who the author is. So this is the book again. This is, I think, an older printing. There's a new printing of it. It's a huge book. It is about 760 pages, and the print is not that small. I mean, not that big. So it's quite detailed. And I think he has a second volume which was never translated into English. It's an Italian original, and it is written by Professor, I think he passed away in the 1990s, I believe, Romano Amerio, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. And so he's an Italian. He was born in Lugano, Switzerland. So Switzerland, as you might know, has sections like the Italian section, the German section, the French section, and then they have the actual part which speaks the original Swiss language as well. So he was born in Lugano, 1905, got his doctorates in philosophy from the Catholic University of Milan in 1927. So there's a whole lot of big intro of who he is, and you can look him up online as well. And he says here in the introduction, says, he is able, Professor Romano Amerio, he is able to speak with unusual competence, compared to the little parrots you hear a lot all over the place, about the work of the Central Preparatory Commission of Vatican II, which prepared the drafts of the schemas that were to be discussed at the council. So this commission was a preparatory commission, and they produced, I don't remember how many documents. And Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre himself was part of one of the commissions as well, in the preparatory commissions. And apparently, and I think you can find the original Vatican II preparatory documents online. So I think all of them were with the German takeover, the Tiber flowing into the Rhine flowing into the Tiber, the German takeover of the council. They trashed all the documents, all the schemas, all the preparatory documents which took years to prepare for the council in the garbage bin, and they started off from zero. They tore down, they dissolved to rebuild, to build back better according to what they wanted, except for the schema, the document on the liturgy, because it had a lot of, as Michael Davies would say, a lot of time bombs which would be exploded after the council. So they dumped all of that work in the garbage bin to start off anew. So he says, the Bishop of Lugano, His Excellency Gelmini, was a member of the commission, and he chose Professor Amerio to work with him as his peritus, his expert, in studying the schemas and in drafting his comments. So Professor Amerio thus gained a close working knowledge of all the documents of Vatican II. So this is somebody who knows what he's talking about, as was Archbishop Lefebvre. And actually Archbishop Lefebvre himself, when this book came out, commented on it and highly recommended that people actually purchase it and read it. As I said, it's not an easy read. It does take concentration. And Archbishop Marcel Lefebvre himself says it's a book has just appeared. Came out in the 1980s. Appeared, IOTA UNUM, written by Professor Romano Amerio, who lives in the north of Italy, to my opinion, it is the most perfect book that has been written since the council, on the council, its consequences, and everything that has been happening in the church since. He examines every subject with a truly remarkable perfection. I was stupefied to see with what serenity he discusses everything, without the passion of polemics, but with untouchable arguments. I do not see how the current attitude of Rome can still persist after the appearance of such a book. They are radically, definitively condemned, and with such precision, for he only uses their own texts, citations from the Osservatore Romano, which is the Vatican newspaper. The whole is absolutely magnificent. And this is the testimony of Bishop Professor Lefebvre about IOTA UNUM. And so, this is a brief introduction, and I wanted just to draw a few parallels before we go into various headings of the chapters, give you a bit of an idea of what it is, and highly recommend that you spend time reading it, because it'll take you a while, because it's not, as I said, an easy read. It is not a quick read. It's something you gotta read and think, read and contemplate, read and digest. But it's not that hard. I mean, it's pretty forward. So as I said, like, this is there was no crisis in the church. Maybe there's a slower mass attendance in the late 50s, but in the 1950s, when Pius XII was still alive, the U.S. would have, I think, 100,000 conversions every year. It was massive conversions to the Catholic Church. Churches were full, vocations were full, seminaries were full. Of course, there were infiltrators there, because, as I said, I mean, it's not magic. Suddenly in Vatican II, the modernists took over. There was these hidden infiltrators who really pretended to be Orthodox, but deep down they were heretical. They wanted to change. They wanted to tear down the old order and build a new order. They wanted to dissolve and reform. And that is basically what happened after Vatican II. So, and as I said, there is a great parallel of what's happened. So we need to modernize. We need a new order. Well, now we have Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum. I'm going to just blur out a few titles, and then you can look it up, read more directly into these, research them yourself. One is called The Fourth Industrial Revolution by Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum. And it's a private organization, and it's basically setting the world at doing its own will. And he wrote another book, COVID-19, The Great Reset. You can get it from Amazon by Klaus Schwab. Prime Minister Trudeau of Canada said, we got to use COVID-19. That's a great opportunity for basically a resetting of everything. A great opportunity. They don't want to get rid of the crisis, because the crisis gives them the chance to tear down, as you can see around you, tearing down private businesses, small ownership, people's who are going to be going out on the streets because they can't afford to pay their mortgages, tearing down and giving them little money from the government to make them live. Tear down and rebuild. Solve et coagula. Destroy and build back better, according to the higher-ups, the elite who think they rule the world. Look up as well Event 201, which a lot of the big names in the Rockefeller Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the World Health Organization, Johns Hopkins University all participated in, and that's in October, a few months ago in October, and it basically wrote the script, wrote the scenario of what we are living through at that very moment. They wrote the script, and now we are living the play. The play of the crisis, of the pandemic. That is the what's going on. And a really a good one to look into as well. It was Dr. It just came out a few days ago. Look it up. Her name is Dr. Geneviève Briand. And before we go again, I want to just say a few things. Well, maybe I'll actually finish up with a few more comments about the parallels between the Great Reset in the Catholic Church and how the propaganda is conducted even with the Great Reset of the whole economic world, the new world order, of the currently using the crisis of the pandemic. All right, so let's go through this book quickly, and then I want to just finish up with a few things, because I don't want you to wait too long. So this is it starts off with as I said, this quote comes from Jesus Christ in Matthew 5:18. Not one jot nor one tittle shall pass away. And everything in this book, it deals with, hey, that's passed away, that changed, that was altered. That's not what the church taught for 1,000 years. This is not the attitude of the church, like what's going on. So it starts with Chapter 1, the crisis. For those who deny there is a crisis, then they do not know the Catholic faith or the Catholic Church. To deny the obvious destruction of faith and morals and doctrine worldwide is to deny what is, unless you don't know that this is wrong, which is amazing for bishops and priests not to know. Well, that actually is another indication of the crisis. So here's, actually I'll put up a little screenshot so I don't need to have to do that. Little screenshots of a couple of these pages. So the crisis, so it talks about denial of the crisis. Well, there was no crisis, but the crisis was created through Vatican II and post-conciliar teaching and practice, that the non-existence of the crisis became a real crisis because it caused the destruction of faith and morals. Adapting the church's contradiction of the world, because Jesus says, if the world loves you, the world will hate you because it hated me first. So if the world loves you, what does that mean? If you're saying, okay, we're not because even the scripture says our three enemies are the world, the flesh, and the devil. The world, the flesh, and the devil. All three. The trinity of evil. So when you say, oh, I want to be friends with the world, we're not talking about regular, meaning the world of evil and sin. When you want to be friends with the world, you are actually an enemy of Christ. So now when the church tries to stop being an enemy of the world, the flesh, and the devil, and wants to be friends with the world, that's a contradiction of what the church has always taught or done. False philosophy of religion. And then in chapters 2, I'm just kind of giving you just a few little words here and there. Chapter 2, his historical sketch, the crises of the church. So he goes from the beginning, from the Council of Jerusalem, up to Vatican II. But of course, after that, it is a completely different crisis than what happened in the past. He goes through the modernist crisis and then the post-conciliar crisis. And then he talks about chapter 3, the preparation of the council. So you need to understand the history and what happened, the preparation of the council, which he participated in. So that's an inside scoop of what happened. Paradoxical outcome of the council. Paradoxical outcome of the council continued. The Roman Synod. Even I think Ratzinger, Pope Benedict XVI said, what we was hoped for at the council didn't turn out what we were hoping for. Exact opposite of what we were hoping. We were hoping for a springtime. We had a winter. We had a dark winter, quoting Biden. And dark winter was actually a simulation as well. Look it up. Dark winter simulation. Everything has a plan. There are plans. There are conspiracies. There is infiltration in the secular and the religious realm. The aims of Vatican II, pastorality. Then chapter 4, the course of the council. So the opening address. So he goes through the whole bunch of stuff. What happened in papal actions at Vatican II, the Nota Previa, the Nota Previa, which is a private note, which, because I think it was some bishops and theologians asking Pope Paul VI, like, what is the doctrinal status of these documents? Like, what's the doctrinal status of this council? Like, what is to be believed or discussed and how, like, so I think in this note it says, Paul VI says, look, only what has been previously defined and taught as faith is to be believed if it's repeated in the council. Anything which is, I don't have it off the top of my head right now, but you can look it up yourself or just read it here. Anything which is innovative or a new teaching, this is, you are not bound to it, basically. It is not a binding on the faith. And then chapter 5, the post-conciliar period. So the first chapter in chapter 5, the first section is leaving the council behind. The spirit of the council. Because what happens is people will say, okay, well, the council document actually says A, B, and C, which is pretty orthodox if you understand it and a continuation of Catholic doctrine. But then people say, well, but the spirit of the council. Who cares what the word on a piece of paper say? We are after the spirit of the council. Like in the US, who cares what the Constitution says? We're after the spirit of the Constitution. Or in Canada, our Charter of Rights. Who cares what the Charter of Rights says about freedom of religion and freedom of assembly? We're talking about the spirit now because, we got to lock everything down for your health. So piece of document means nothing. We're after the spirit, and who cares about the actual written word? Then he says in section 50, novel hermeneutics of the council continued. And then the post-conciliar period continued. The new man, as if human nature changes. Human nature is unchangeable. You can go to any country on the planet. You can go 2,000, 5,000 years ago. People are people. Wasn't there a song? People are people. Anyways, something like that. And then section 53, impossibility of radical change in the church. Can be done. Because if you change the church, change doctrine, you change the faith once for all delivered to the saints, then you preach and believe error. Doctrine cannot change. Faith cannot change. Doctrine does not develop into another meaning. Doctrine can be deepened. Development of doctrine is not an evolution of doctrine. These are two different things. Development of doctrine meaning you get a deeper understanding of the same truth. Evolution of doctrine is changing of the doctrinal meaning from one meaning to another meaning. This is condemned heresy. And that is what happens a lot. Well, the church used to say that, but now it says that. Well, now that's not a doctrinal development, but it's a doctrinal evolution, which is heretical. Now I'm skipping a bunch. Chapter 6, I'm not the post-conciliar church, Paul VI. Section 62, the church disunited over Humanae Vitae. I'm skipping here just because there's a lot. Chapter 7, the crisis of the priesthood. You see, 1 iota. This is not just 1 iota. These are a billion iotas which have been changed and altered and deformed. The crisis in the priesthood. Section 79, the defection of priests. Section 80, the canonical legitimization of priestly defections. And then chapter 8, the church and youth. Section 88, it has juvenilism in the church continued, the Swiss bishops. Chapter 9, the church and women. Critique of feminism, feminism as masculinism. Feminist theology. Decline in morals, personal shame. These are different sections, subsections. So I'm not going to continue anymore because there's actually how many chapters in this thing? It has 41 chapters plus an epilogue. So I'm not going to read you every section of a lot of sections of, but maybe I'll just read the titles of the chapters. So we have chapter 10, as I said, somatolatry, which is the worship of the body and penance. Chapter 11, religious and social movements. Chapter 12, schools. 13, catecheses. Catechesis, teaching of the faith. Chapter 14, religious orders. Dialogue in chapter 16. Chapter 22 is divorce. There's a chapter on abortion, natural law, the death penalty. Chapter 26 talks about the death penalty. Opposition to the death penalty. Doctrinal change in the church, which is impossible. And of course, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, the Argentine Pope, decided of his own authority, which he does not have, to overrule God in the Old Testament, God in the New Testament, God and Jesus Christ, who told Pontius Pilate, "You have the right to execute me. That right was given to you from heaven." But Jorge says, no, it is the death penalty is against the Gospels. No. It doesn't matter what you say. You obey God rather than man. You obey the word of God rather than Jorge. You obey Jesus Christ rather than Jorge. You obey the church fathers rather than Jorge. You obey the church's teaching of 1,900 years over Jorge. So it has a chapter on the death penalty, a chapter on war. This pacifism is not Catholic. Section 191, Christianity and war. Section 192, pacifism and peace. Anyways. And then another chapter, whatever it is, situation ethics. Well, situation ethics is condemned by the church too. Globality and graduality. Global morality. Critique of globality. Here you go. Globalism. That was written in the 1980s. Autonomy of values, chapter 30. Well, my values, your values, my truth, your truth. Doesn't matter. The anthropocentric teleology of Gaudium et Spes. He describes it. Work, technology, contemplation, civilization, second Christianity, democracy in the church, the principles of 1789 and the church, which is the French Revolution in the church. That is section 225. Examination of democracy. Episcopal Conferences talks about that. Chapter 34. Theology and philosophy in the post-conciliar period. Chapter 35, everybody's favorite, ecumenism, but Vatican II condemned false Irenicism. And Irenicism, if you read pre-conciliar papal teaching, they talk about Irenicism as what is called actually nowadays ecumenism, which is the reduction, the watering down of doctrine and differences to reach false unity with people who do not believe the same thing. This is false Irenicism, which passes for ecumenism these days. Even Vatican II scholars condemns false Irenicism. But this is called ecumenism these days. So he has it, it says, change in the notion of Christian unity, the instruction of 1949. So he starts from the beginning. Section 254, a critique of the new ecumenism, Pelagian coloring, unimportance of missions. Missions is the conversion, going to send people on mission to go and preach the gospel, convert people to the one and only Church of Jesus Christ, to the one and only true faith. Missions died after Vatican II, because if everybody's saved, what's the point of bothering people with the truth? Everybody has a truth. Everybody has a path to heaven. Nobody goes to hell. So why sacrifice yourself and go preach the gospel to anyone? You know, they all worship God anonymously. They're anonymous Christians. Then he goes into another chapter, the sacraments, about the sacraments. He starts with baptism and change in the theology of the sacraments. Change in the theology of the sacraments, which is impossible. The Eucharist, Catholic doctrine of the Eucharist. The new theology of the Eucharist, which is impossible. Liturgical reform. Talks about the liturgical deform, the destruction of the Roman Rite. The new version of the liturgy. Change in vocabulary, Pelagian tendencies. So when Francis calls traditionalists Pelagians, it is the Pelagians who call the Orthodox Pelagian. It's like, like the Democrats in the States who want to censor everybody, are pro-war, lying all the time, would call those who are conservative or traditional exactly what they are, exactly what they do. That's what happens. Another mirror of what happened in the church. Chapter, again, matrimony. Chapter on matrimony. And the primary and secondary goods of matrimony. They can't be switched around. Theodicy. The new theodicy. Death as an evil, moral origin of human suffering. Death and judgment. Eschatology, which is the end of the time. About hell. Defense of hell. He has a section 314. Defense of hell. The eternity of punishment. Hell as pure justice. Epilogue. So, in Epilogue, he talks about the unchanging character of Catholic doctrine. St. Vincent of Lerins and Cardinal Newman. Page 710 in my edition. Loss of unity of worship, loss of unity of government, conditions of the church today. That's like in the 70s or early 80s. Not now, which is far, far, far worse. Decline of the church's social influence in the world. Of course, when you conform to the world, how can you influence the world? You can't. The apostles and the early church converted the whole world by being not friends of the world, but teachers of those who are in darkness to bring them to the light. Obscuring Catholic doctrine regarding the last things. Humanistic ecumenism. Humanistic ecumenism. Diagnosis and prognosis, the final conjectures. So anyways, this is the book, IOTA UNUM, by Amerio, Romano Amerio. Big book, excellent book. If you want to know the origins of the Great Reset, the solve et coagula, the dissolving and the coagulating, the reforming, that happened in the church over the last 50, 60 years, which is now being orchestrated for the world as we know it by doing the Great Reset, by building back better, by using the crisis of the pandemic as an opportunity to do what you wanted. Not what we want, but what those who are members of the World Economic Forum and the UN higher-ups want to do. And what are some of the other... So this is the book. If you want to understand and actually get to understand the Catholic faith even better, it is a book to get, to treasure, to read and reread. I think I read it twice years ago. I should read it again. So... and so what are some of the other similarities between the Great Reset in the church and the Great Reset in the world? Well, they used the innovators, the destroyers of truth in the church, used the event of Vatican II because they rejected even the text. Now it's all the spirit of the council. We don't care what the text says, even if it contradicts the spirit. So they used the event of the council to destroy, to dissolve the whole structure of administrative, theological, doctrinal, liturgical structure of the church, to rebuild, to build back better according to their vision, which actually precipitated the real crisis in the loss of faith. But it is a crisis for those who care. Maybe for them, that is the desired end. That is what they wanted. So it's a great thing. It's a springtime of atheism, a springtime of heresy, a springtime of freedom from the truth. So now, of course, the seculars are using the event to rebuild as they wish, to destroy the social order, which existed, the social economic order, and to destroy it, to dissolve it, to rebuild it according to their vision, which will be the major, huge corporations taking over everything. The other thing, those who criticized Vatican II, the council, the event, and just saying the actual fact, which John the 23rd said, which Paul VI himself said, and which Benedict XVI, when he was called Cardinal Ratzinger, himself said that this is restricted itself to being a mere pastoral council. It did not define any doctrine. It did not define any dogma. So every single council before Vatican II is superior to Vatican II, who defined no doctrine and no dogma, just proposed pastoral directions and orientations, and proposed new ideas. That's it. So when a true Catholic says, well, that's what the council says, that was John the 23rd, Paul VI, Benedict himself said, so why are we, but what do the innovators say? These are deniers of Vatican II. They're Vatican II deniers. Matches the COVID deniers. They're COVID deniers. Well, it's like your recovery rate, according to the latest Reuters news agency headline, was mortality is down by 30% since April. This was printed in November. And basically, the survival, you'll be, even if you get it, your chances of being just fine and dandy is 99.4%. Look it up. Reuters news agency, survival rate of COVID is 30% better than it was in April. So, and other statistics from CDC show that it is, for younger people, it's like almost 99.9%. There's nothing. The only vulnerable persons are really old and sick people. And there's a new study by Dr. Briand it was published on the John Hopkins newsletter, and then was removed, but you can find her whole video on YouTube where she's Dr. Briand, what's her name again? Genevieve Briand, I think Master of Science in Applied Economics. And she's Assistant Director. Anyways, so and this was published November 13th, 2020. You can find her whole video on YouTube. It's called COVID-19 Deaths, a look at US data. Look it up on YouTube. And she has the full conference. And basically her conclusion is she examines not the deaths, she just examines the total deaths per year from 2014, I believe, to 2020. The full death toll of every single year. And she says 2020 didn't make any difference. There is no difference. You'd expect if there's a big pandemic, then the death toll would be much higher. And basically she shows what happened is, say, the death from all causes, including heart disease, was like up here in, say, 2019. And then in 2020, this is the coronavirus, the COVID-19. It's down here, say. And then suddenly the COVID-19 death is recorded as up here, and causes from all causes of death from all other causes plummets virtually the same amount of the increase in COVID-19 deaths, including heart disease, stroke, cancer, kidney failure, every other disease goes down by almost the exact same amount as the death from the COVID, which she says, this doctor in economics, and she bases her numbers off the CDC website itself. So she takes you to the CDC website, shows you their numbers. And she says the only explanation is a reclassification of those who died from heart attack because they tested positive with the PCR test, which is a bunch of crap, which the New York Times said is 90% false positive because they go through very high cycles of magnification. So they test positive, but actually their amount of viral load is virtually nothing. So what happens is a misclassification of people who died from a heart attack, but they tested positive. So now they're already, no heart attack. Now it is COVID. Those who died from, from a kidney failure or from cancer, but they tested positive. So, no, they didn't die from cancer. Now it's registered as dying from COVID. So if there is a real pandemic, then the death total would be much higher than it is. Even for old people, it turns out the death totals are the same as it was in 2019. So there's always a gradual increase from 2014 to 2013. Every year there's a 1.5%, 1.2%, 1% increase in total death because aging population and so forth. So she, a doctor in economics, you can find her whole video on YouTube, and it was originally published, and it is actually under the Advanced Academics program of the Johns Hopkins University. Johns Hopkins University Advanced Academic Programs YouTube channel. It's there, her full video. So they're using the event, the pandemic, to dissolve and destroy. And they call it, anybody says, well, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, look at all the data. I mean, you're almost 100% recovery rate, 99.4%. And this doctor shows there's absolutely no real differences over the years. So it's okay. Yeah, when people get sick, it's a severe flu or a cold. Okay, fine. But it's nothing to worry about. He's a COVID denier. It's like you're a Vatican II denier. What am I denying? Denying something that doesn't change much. So I mean, you do your own research. And as I said, I mean, this is pretty amazing. I mean, now we're talking about. You think of it. Our Lady of Fatima said the third part of the secret must be revealed by 1960. And now there's the agenda, UN Agenda 2030, where they want to implement, basically, the Great Reset of the World Economic Forum, the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And what is this? This is 70 years after what Our Lady of Fatima said. Her part of that message has to be revealed. 70 years. 70 years is a very biblical number. So let's see what happens in 2030. But anyways, so this is the parallels between the Great Reset, which happened in the Catholic Church, and the Great Reset that is being attempted to happen in the world. So that's it. That's all. I hope you like this video. I hope you actually purchase that book. I think it's published by Angelus Press, or you can probably get it from Amazon, but support Angelus instead of giving it to Amazon and give them more money, because only Amazon and Walmart and Target, the big guys, these are the ones making the money off the lockdown, and they want the lockdown to continue forever and ever because they make the money. The government gives, checks to the people to help them survive, and the people try to go to other shops. There's nothing open. Okay, so take the money from the government, give it to Amazon. Take the money from the government, give it to Walmart. Take the money from the government, give it to Target. Has to stop. All right, so I hope you like this video. If you like it, please like it. Press the notification bell, subscribe to this channel, and share on Facebook, Twitter, Parler, and anywhere you like, or even by mail, by email to your friends, relatives, and those who want to know what has happened in the church in the last 50, 60 years. All right, have a great day. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.